Hey guys, this is the start of a series that I'm making going over the trade skills in New World. This is a topic that I feel like hasn't been updated or at least touched on since New World Aeternum came out. So I figured since I'm new to the whole content creation thing, why not spike my anxiety for public speaking and deadlines by making myself do a big project. So today we're going to begin the series with an introduction to gathering, going over all the things you may want to consider or at least be aware of before setting off as a new player, or some things that you may have not known if you're an experienced player. This can be seen as a primer for the gathering guides in the series, as well as standalone info for aspects that you may not have known. There will be timestamps down below, so feel free to go forward or go back to anything that interests you. And let's get into it. So to start off, let's go over what the gathering trade skills are. First, we've got logging, mining, harvesting, and tracking and skinning. Technically, fishing is a gathering skill, but it doesn't really work the same way as the other four. So I'm just going to leave that to its own standalone video, and we'll go over that at a later time. I do just want to point out though, at level 1, your gathering speed bonus is going to be 0, and it's going to gradually go up until you reach the cap, which is currently 220% at level 65. This will make more sense later, but just be aware as you level up your logging or mining or whatever it is, this is going to increase over time and make you gather just a little bit faster. And as a side note, I'll be referencing gathering luck in this video, so if you've seen my other video on loot luck, know that it works similarly, but I'm also going to give that its own standalone video at a later time, so just be aware of that. Next, we're going to go over the tools that are needed for gathering, which are an axe for logging, a pick for mining, knife for skinning, and a sickle for harvesting. There are multiple tiers for these tools, each with different level requirements to use them, and improvements as you go up each tier. Starting off, we have the tier 1 flint tools. These can all be made as soon as you start the game and wash up on the beach by grabbing flint off the ground and some wood from the bushes. Then you go over to the campfire and craft them. Tier 2 is iron tools. At this point, tools can start rolling perks on a craft. Should be able to be crafted upon reaching your first town at level 5. Tier 3, we have steel, which are a nice jump up from iron and can roll up 2 perks, and these require level 20. At tier 4, we move to star metal, giving almost twice the gathering speed increase as from iron to steel, and granting up to 3 perks requiring level 40 to use. Finally, tier 5 has several offerings in orichalcum, mithril, and artisan respectively. Orichalcum is the lowest of the tier 5, but it can roll up to 5 perks including elemental attunement. Artisan tools give a nice bunch of guaranteed perks, but still fall behind mithril, which can be the highest quality and have a better variety of perks. Speaking of perks, let's go over what perks can be rolled on the tools. Azoth extraction gives you a chance to gain 1 Azoth when gathering a node. It's really not good after level 20 because after that point you're pretty much going to be capped out all the time. Gathering alacrity gives a 50% haste for 3 seconds after gathering a node. Gathering recovery lets you heal for 75 to 350 health per second for 10 seconds after gathering a node. This really isn't good because it's not much of a heal. Efficiency gives a 20 to 111% base logging speed, or gathering speed in this case. Logging luck gives a 2 to 11% chance of finding rare items when gathering. Yield gives a 10 to 21% increase to resources gained whenever you gather a node. And discipline gives you an increase of 3 to 11% on experience after you've completed gathering a node. Personally, I always choose efficiency, luck, and yield on all of my tools to get that extra amount of resources, extra chance for rare resources, and to gather just that little bit faster. But whatever fits your playstyle is the ones that you should probably choose, so don't let me tell you what to do. Lastly, in regards to perks, orichalcum and mithril can have attunements giving you a chance of receiving a mote after harvesting a node. I'd suggest trying for life or soul attunement on your axe or sickle, as you can get lots of motes from chopping down small trees rapidly or harvesting a bunch of herbs, and these 2 motes are needed for regeneration potions, and thus are always in demand. And then maybe add a fire or an air attunement to your remaining 2 tools for reasons that we'll see a little bit later on. Finally, on tools, I want to point out a few special cases in which you can get unique tools. For knives, The Old Master's skinning knife can be obtained from Tuark the Beast, the oversized pig found between the starting beach and the town at either Monarchs or Windsward. Beartooth is a quest reward from Grizzly Neighbors, a quest in Northeast Brightwood. And Turkulon's Claw is a drop from the Thanksgiving event. For sickles, the Farmhand Sickle is a quest reward from the First Hand Accounts quest in Windsward. And for pickaxes, the Journeyman's Pickaxe is a quest reward for the quest Crisis at the Mines in Monarch's Bluff. And the Ancient Mining Pick is the reward for the Story of the Stones in Western Weaver's Fen as soon as you enter the region. Lastly, each faction sells pseudo tier 3 tools with the same gathering speed as the iron tools, but with a guaranteed discipline perk for that extra gathering XP. Now let's briefly touch on the specific gathering gear. These gear pieces come in 4 tiers. Tier 3, green, is the low tier. Tier 4, blue, is the mid tier. Tier 5, purple, is the high tier. Each gives an attribute boost to the corresponding trade skill, which we'll go over in a minute, along with a boost to gathering luck for that trade skill that increases with the gear score of each item. You'll notice 203 gear scored lumberjack pants only give 2.6% luck. 499 gear score gives 4.4. And the 620 gear score gives 5.1. Each of these is a random drop in the open world, depending on the level of the enemy that you defeat. Now you may be wondering why I said there are 4 tiers of gathering gear, but I only listed 3. That's because the second tier 5 set is the 700 gear score set, and can only be obtained from aptitude chests that you get after reaching level 250 in that trade skill. Then you have to go to the outfitting station and craft the armor from the pattern, as you can see here. The 700 gear score piece doesn't just give luck, but it also gives 1.5% extra resource yield per piece, which when you add it up comes out to 7.5% extra yield. Going back to the point of attributes that I was just talking about, each trade skill has an attribute that corresponds with it. For strength, it's mining. For dexterity, it's skinning. Intelligence is harvest. Focus is fishing, but in this case it doesn't apply since we're going to address that in a different video. And constitution is logging. Certain milestones in each attribute give bonuses to the corresponding gathering skill. These are the same across all the attributes, but in this case we're going to go ahead and use constitution for logging. So at 25 points you get a bonus 10% logging speed. At 150 points, you drop the weight of logged items by 10%. At 200 points, you get yet another 20% logging speed on top of the 10% that you got at the 25 point. At 250 points, you get a 10% yield bonus when logging. And then at 350 points, you get a bonus 10% chance or 1,000 points to your luck when gathering rare items, such as in the case of strength, like gems. The outliers for these though are at strength 50 points, you get plus 25 encumbrance. Dexterity 50 points, you get plus 20% haste for 3 seconds after skinning, which is just like the gathering alacrity perk. Intelligence, you get a 5% chance to get 1 Azoth after harvesting, which is just no. And then constitution, you get a 1.5% or 150 point increase to your luck for all the gathering. And then at 300 points, for both strength and constitution, you have a 25% chance to chop down a tree in a single swing, or in strength's case, mine a node. I do want to note, however, that this only applies to the first swing and is predetermined. So if you don't get the proc on that first swing, stepping off and then trying to mine the node again is not going to make it trigger. At 300 points of dex, you gain an extra 20% haste for 5 seconds after killing prey, which is just about any animal. And then for harvesting, nothing. I will quickly mention, however, that if you aren't able to find yourself like lumberjack pants or mining shoes or whatever as you level up, it's not that big of a deal. I would just suggest that as you start getting a little bit higher up in level, you start finding pieces that have the corresponding attribute, such as like right here, If I wasn't an idiot, I would probably swap these out to give myself an extra bit of luck. But anyway, this one has 29 Constitution, which is helping me reach that milestone threshold within the Constitution lane. So I'm going to go ahead and swap these out. But at least in this case, I was able to make myself keep up even though I wasn't getting the full amount of log luck. And as an alternative, you can always just go over to the trading post and pick up a cheap pair of either tier 3 lumberjack pants, even though they're not going to give you the amount of attributes that you would want, especially at a higher level. But I'm pretty sure the tier 3s are pretty cheap. Tier 2s are kind of middle of the road, I guess. And then when you get up to tier 5, the lower version is probably about a few hundred to maybe 1,000 gold. And then when you get up to the 700 gear score, these are generally, I would say probably somewhere around 1 to several thousand gold, depending on which type of piece you're getting. But those can really just hold off until you're able to get your own out of aptitude chests. And before I forget, you also, for each type of gathering, can get an amulet. In this case, we'll go back to logging. And you can get the Adored Logging Luck or Harvesting Luck. Probably, nope, don't have one for harvesting. So for skinning, Adored Skinning Luck. And this, like the other items, are going to give you an increased amount of luck based on the gear score of the item. I believe it caps out at 11%, but here at 625, 9.8 is perfectly fine to me. And it's just another way to eke out that little bit of extra luck so you can get those higher tier rare materials. And then lastly, to tie up gear, I just want to give my personal opinion on weapons that you should choose for each gathering profession. This is mainly going to be for mobility on one of the weapons, if not both. And then for the other one, I want it to scale with the corresponding attribute. So in this case, for mining, I have longsword. And then for mobility, I'm going to go with boltcaster. This is mainly because I want it for mobility, which I'll show you in a second. And then the magnify allows that highest attribute to be strength when I'm wearing the mining set. And so this, even though it's a bow, will give me strength. So if we go over here to weapon masteries, for the longsword, I'm going to get Leaping Strike, which allows me to cross a river or a chasm or something that's going to slow me down so I don't have to take time to ford across. And then for the bow, I'm going to take Dodge and Weave, which if I dodge with full stamina gives 10% haste for 2 seconds. And then I'm going to get Archer's Speed, which gives another 10% haste for 5 seconds when I swap to my bow. With a little bit of practice between these two, you can pretty much keep a mostly 100% uptime on your haste. It's not foolproof, but it pretty much does wonders for me whenever I'm running around. So then we go back to our gear here. For skinning, I'm already using a bow for the case of wanting to have something with dexterity scaling. So alongside it, I'm using the Life Taker, since the Disintegrate proc can scale off of dexterity. And it's just going to allow me to do a little bit more damage, so if I can't take something out in one shot, then this will hopefully do the trick. For harvesting, I'm going to go with the Fire Staff because of the burnout, which, just like Leaping Strike, will give me the ability to cross a river. I mean, 18 meters is pretty far, so I think it's good. And then for that one, I'm not using a bow. I probably should, but in this case, I'm just using the Life Taker for extra little bit of defensive ability. And then for logging, I'm going again with a bow and a greatsword. And it doesn't have to be the same ones that I'm using. Like for mining, you could use a bow and a longsword or greatsword or great axe. Each of those has a gap closer in charge for the great axe and relentless rush for the great sword. For skinning, I mean, I guess you could use something else, but that's kind of just up to you. For harvesting, you can trade out the Life Taker for a bow, just again for that extra mobility. And then logging, since it scales off Constitution and you're not going to do any damage at any time anyway, you may as well just go with whatever you feel like. Now, when it comes to assigning attribute points when gathering, I'm going to briefly go over a basic version of my quote-unquote philosophy on this topic. For starters, I generally run farming routes that I know offhand, and usually they aren't consisting of a single resource type, meaning if I'm going to be going on one of my iron ore routes, for example, I know I'll potentially be stopping to grab weirdwood, fiber, orichalcum, stuff like that along the way. So generally I wear, initially at least, the gear set for the highest tier resource, and I'll come across and bump that attribute to about 350. So here I'm going to start off with my mining set just for this example. So I want to get my strength up to 350 because I want to get that extra luck for the high tier resources like orichalcum. And then I'm going to put my remaining points into probably about at least 50 for Constitution. It's a little off right now because I've got a food that's buffing it by 36. And then anything else that I'm going to come across along the way, so I'm probably going to come across some fibers. So I want to get that at least to 25, even though I don't use intelligence in either of the weapons that I'm using. I still want to just have that little bit of extra harvest speed. And then 25 dexterity for if I potentially come across any animals that I need to skin. So now I can look at bumping up anything with my remaining points. So I'm going to go ahead and bump Constitution up to about as high as I want. Sadly, I'm going to be just shy of getting the next tier on logging. So let's go with, I don't know, more dexterity. That sounds good. And then a little bit more for survivability along the way. Now you can feel free to assign your points however you see fit. If you want to cap out all strength and constitution because you're only going to be going after ores and trees, that's perfectly fine. This is just what I've found to be efficient because it kind of covers me over just about anything that I'm going to come across to varying degrees. But do what works for you. So let's move on to potions, foods, and boosters. The main two potions we're going to be looking at are the proficiency and the encumbrance potion. The proficiency potion increases the yield that you get for 30 minutes by 15%. And the encumbrance potion increases your encumbrance limit by 500 for 10 minutes. Starting with the proficiency potion, come in here to the workshop, scroll down, and the powerful proficiency booster requires 1 air quintessence, 1 soul quintessence, and an Azoth water. Keep these resources in mind, because when I run over here to the arcane repository, look up the cost for the encumbrance potion, we have fire mote and air mote. If you remember back when I was talking about attunements on your tools, I said life or rejuvenation potions, spirit or soul, fire, and air. If I were to go back over to the workshop, remember that there was 1 soul quintessence and 1 air quintessence. These 4 motes that you're getting are going to help you keep your supply of encumbrance potions and proficiency potions topped off, as long as you every once in a while come across an elemental animal and some infused Azoth water. Excuse me. Now in terms of food, we're looking at attribute and trade skill foods, which for attribute foods, You really just want to use whatever food helps boost your attributes to the desired milestones that we mentioned before. Using the highest tier food that's available to you. In this case, we're going to look at focus food. So the tier 2 food requires level 1 and increases your focus by 10. Tier 2 requires level 15 and increases by 20. Then we jump straight to tier 5. We'll call this 5A. Increases by 40 and requires level 45. 5B increases by 44 and requires level 61. And 5C increases by 48 and requires level 65. For trade skill foods, these boost your gathering luck for the corresponding trade skill by 2,000 points and 2,500 points, respectively, requiring level 15 for something like spicy steak pie, giving 2,000 points for harvesting, or requiring level 61 for something like bear flanking cabbage, which gives 2,500 points. The lower tier dishes are generally very cheap to either craft or buy. I will generally keep several dozen of, say, the spicy steak pie or savory fish or salted poultry in each of my loadouts. And so if I come across, let's say, ironwood, and I'm running the savory fish cake, it costs almost nothing to swap it out with the salted poultry with cabbage. However, I would really only use the 2,500 point ones for if you're doing focused farming, like on mithril or spin fiber, because you really want those rare resources, the rare proc drops, and this is much more expensive to craft or buy. So as a quick addition that I thought of while I was editing this, and I know I keep saying quick addition, side note, all that, I'm sorry, my ADHD does not allow me to have a one-track mind, but the Winter Convergence Festival started today, and so if I come over here to the Bountiful Gift Sack, or if you go to the trees in the middle of any of the settlements, you'll get presents, and let's see, I got Convergence Cake, which if I go over here to the Yeti, so you can show me all of them, that gives me 36 strength for 40 minutes, which is just shy of the tier 5 foods, the attribute foods that we just talked about, and it only requires level 10. So since these foods persist on well after the festival's over, you can just load up on these if you're a lower level player and you don't get much time to play, and just use this until you're able to get to that higher tier and either afford or produce your own food to keep up and get you the attributes that you need. Now, before I go on talking about boosters, I just wanted to take a second to show off my awesome house down here in Cutlass Keys. This is where I sit here with my bestest boys. And we just watch the people walk by. And if you didn't know, this is actually a waterfront property. Because if I come out here and to the right, down here in southwest Cutlass Keys, this is the Well of Fortune. And it's actually, at least for max level players, a really good alternative to be able to get Gold Touch Proficiency Booster, potions, stat foods, attribute foods, and trade skill foods. So the Proficiency Potion is 10 Mystic Doubloons once a week for a pack of 5. Stat boost, you can get 5 crates of them. They give you a random stat boost meal. Trade skill, same thing. Gives you a random trade skill boost meal. Sometimes you get the not the refining ones, sorry. The crafting ones. But on occasion you can get some decent gathering profession ones. And in total, 3 times 5, 15. 3 times 5, 15. So we're 30. And 10. So for 40 Mystic Doubloons, which is basically doing one of these random daily quests around Cutlass Keys, there's all these yellow markers. Those are repeatable daily quests. Those give 35 doubloons apiece. And then you just open, let's say, one random chest. There you go. You've got a week's supply, or at least what the game thinks is a week's supply, of several of the stat boosts, your proficiency boosters, and your trade skill boosts. Now for the last of the consumables, we have boosters. And I want to preface this by saying these are 100% optional because they cost real life money, which is then used to buy the premium currency of Marks of Fortune. The only other way to get these is also through the Battle Pass, or the Season Pass, it's actually called, on both the free and the premium side. And you can get them to varying amounts. But the ones we're going to focus on are the Gathering XP booster, which gives you 100% extra XP to all your gathering professions. This does not apply after level 250, but it does help you get up to level 100 really fast, which is an absolute slog to get there normally. And if you use it after level 100 and are able to farm those higher tier nodes, you'll absolutely fly and slingshot through up to level 250. Next we have the Proficiency Booster. This increases your yield from all gathering sources for 90 minutes. I want to take a second to point out that this Proficiency Booster will actually be canceled out by the regular Proficiency Booster potion, because this gives 15% yield for 30 minutes, and this one gives 10% yield for 90 minutes. So if you use the potion first and then try to use the Augment Booster, it will say that a more powerful effect is already in place. But if you use the Augment Proficiency Booster and then a potion, the Augment Booster will actually be canceled out and disappear, therefore wasting your money. Also, we want to look at the Territory Standing Booster. I just want you to be aware of it for right now. It gives an extra 100% for 2 hours to Territory Standing, and we'll get into using that a little bit later. We're in the home stretch, and now I want to talk about music and the amazing versatile boost that it gives. I'm not going to talk about the instruments themselves or the perks that they have, but I do want to make a quick aside and say if you want to raise your music level quickly, get Blacksmith's Arm on upright bass, played at the expert level. It's 54 seconds, which puts it right in about the middle tier of amount of time that it takes. But even on expert, it's easier to play than most of the novice songs. And it has just enough notes to where it'll give you a ton of XP, especially if you're able to get a 4-star on it. And speaking of 4 stars, all the numbers that I'm about to give you are based off of a 4-star performance. So first up, we have Decidedly Dexterous, which if you read here, says increases gathering speed. In reality, it gives a 75% additive speed boost when gathering. It's not meaning that it's going to make 75% faster, but in reality, it's a 75% additive speed. So if you remember, the difference between a flint tool and an iron tool was about 100% difference. Basically, I'm saying if you're a low-level player, it's good. It really just falls off pretty much when you get up to about star metal tier tools. Next up is Fortune's Favor. This gives a 10% yield bonus for 60 minutes. And I would like to note that this does stack with both the Proficiency Potion or the Booster that we talked about earlier. While neither of those stack together, this can go with either or of them. So you can have either 20% or 25% bonus efficiency. Then we have Luck's Labor. This increases your luck when gathering by 5% or 500 points for 90 minutes. It's great for added luck for higher tier farming. And I would suggest this at about, well, pretty much just if you're max level farming. Never Stop Learning. This would be really good because it increases your XP for non-fishing gathering skills, meaning all the ones we've talked about so far, by 10% for 80 minutes. However, it's the last buff that you're going to get as you unlock levels in music. And so requiring level 205, I'd just say that if you see someone playing with this buff on offer in a town, just tip them a few coins at the end of their song and get it that way. And then Song in Your Step gives 100 encumbrance for 2 hours, which is pretty much just a poor man's encumbrance potion. And then much like the booster, Territorial Triumph increases your territory standing gains by 30% for 90 minutes. Again, we're just going to leave this right here. I want you to be aware of it, but not exactly necessary at this point. Second to last, we have writing. This is another do what suits you best topic, but in short, the higher your writing level, the faster your mount will go. Just do the time trial races. They'll start out in Everfall, then you move on to Weaver's Fen, Great Cleave, Brimstone Sands, and if you get past that and you're not level 250 in writing, you can do a few of the Elysian Wilds ones, but it's pretty easy. It takes a few hours. What I really want to talk about in here is some of the trinkets that you get at various points. The first one is the Cavalier Crest. This is obtained at riding level 210 and decreases your mount up time from 3 to 2 seconds. Alternatively, there's the Beast of Burden Bangle. Try saying that 3 times fast. And you obtain this at riding level 140, and it allows you to mount up while up to 20% over encumbered, which is great when you see a few extra nodes, but don't want to fat walk all the way back to town. And the Redondo Mount Charm, obtained at riding level 110, is my personal choice, as the dash recovery is versatile in just about any situation. Finally, here we are, the last topic, which I think is also the most slept on topic, which is the town board. Now you may be wondering, how does donating stuff I've farmed help me in any way? Well, we aren't really focusing on the ones that require that you give in your materials that you farmed or crafted, but instead we're going to focus on the Explorer and the Hunter versions. Generally, whenever I'm in a town, I stop at the board and take any hunting mission, as these can be done just about anywhere on the map. So if I need to hunt 10 rabbits, I can just run them over with my mount as I go and move on. Kidding. I'm stopping to skin that thing because we always skin every rabbit we come across, because I want that sweet, sweet rabbit foot, which is worth several thousand gold. As for the Explorer missions, I generally take the ones that I know are along my farming route, such as here in Windsward. I know that the ones that I'm going to come across are over here on Canaan Tomb and Amarine Temple, and I have several things that I gather here in this area. So if I'm going to go in there and take a minute or two to stop and loot a few chests, which already are going to have refining materials that I need anyway, it's worth it to me. And these give 913 territory standing, which is a huge point at lower levels and allows you to still like bonuses like gathering speed increases, territory standing, and then also storage increases, increasing by 25 pounds every time. And that just allows you to farm a little bit faster, gain those same territory XPs faster, and store all the stuff you farmed just a little bit more. I would like to note that all of these have diminishing returns. So here you'd see the base goes up 5%, but up here it's only going up 2.2%. I think that's the math. So I would say focus on the 3 that I mentioned. Just do not take, under any circumstances, the XP, which I'm sure I don't have any to show right here. Yep. But it's currently useless after level 65 because all you'd be getting is extra XP. Well, once you've capped out, you can't get any more. But as a quick callback to the territory standing booster and song that I just talked about a little bit ago, I will usually complete several missions in multiple towns and then pop one or both of those boosters or songs, and then teleport around and get all the nice boosts from all the standing gains. This is even more beneficial right now with the Winter Conversions Festival, because you're pretty much jumping around all the different towns anyway to collect the trees. So just run around and grab those town boards and set yourself up for the next day, 2 days, however long it takes you to complete them. And I was just kidding about that being the last tip, because I completely forgot about this part, where as you're out farming, you're probably going to come across some of these rare drops, being strange ore, abnormal ore, unusual ore, or bizarre ore. And there's one of these for each gatherable. So for wood, it's going to be saps. Harvesting, it's going to be pollen. And skinning, it's going to be bones. But they're all going to be the same, with gray being strange, coming from the lower tier materials: iron, green wood, mature wood, regular fibers. Abnormal coming from star metal, gold ore, weird wood, silk. Blue tier being unusual, which comes from orichalcum, platinum, and then for the others it's ironwood, wire fiber. And then the last tier is bizarre. These come from mithril ore, spin fiber, animals that drop dark hide, stuff like that. So you're just going to come in here, have them in your inventory or in your territory storage. Just ramp it all the way up. It's going to give quite a bit of mining XP. And there you go. Free XP. Even after you get to your level 250, it gives you XP for aptitude chests. So that about does it for today. Hopefully you're able to learn something new or useful. And if you didn't, thanks for sticking around to the end anyway. Like I said, I'm still new to the whole content creation thing, but I'm trying to get better so I can make content that's useful and educational without as much fluff and maybe a little bit of comedy. But if you feel like I earned it, drop a like so more people can see this info, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the Gathering series. And if you think I missed something or just want to tell me how bad I am at this, let me know in the comments so I can lay awake at night, staring into the abyss, reflecting on my life's choices. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.